Hi, in this video I wanted to have another look at microscope cameras. So for the past few videos where I've used the microscope, I've been using this 21 megapixel C-mount camera from Banggood. I think it was about £100. The links are down below in the description if you're interested in having a look at this. But this has been a really good camera. It's really easy to use, so you just give it 12 volts. It's got a HDMI port so you can display it directly on your monitor. It does have a USB port if you wanted to stream to your PC, but it's got a micro SD card slot in the side, so you can just record directly to the SD card and import it into your video editing software, and it works directly. There's no timestamp or anything on there messing up your image. So this has been really good. I just wasn't sure whether this was the cause of some of my image quality issues. So although this is pretty good, I think it doesn't have the greatest dynamic range or the processing to allow you to have high dynamic range. So it's very easy to wash out parts of the image, especially on soldering, where some of the solder joints look extremely shiny and they're reflecting the light, and then it sort of ruins the whole image. So what I've done is I've purchased a camera with the IMX290 sensor on it. I bought this one from Lapsang Gift, and I think that cost me £300 delivered, which is not too bad for an IMX290 camera with the autofocus. You can get it somewhere in the region of £250 up to £400 depending on where you buy, and you can buy it on AliExpress from loads of sellers, but I chose to buy it from Lapsang Gift. I've had good results. I ordered these lights and the C-mount adapter from Lapsang Gift, and they arrived within a week, and you know, no problems at all with that eBay seller. So I'll also put the link down below to that listing. So the camera itself is really nicely built. It's got a HDMI port on the top, along with a USB port to allow you to plug in a mouse. Then it's got the micro SD card slot for recording, and then also a 5-volt port for power. Unfortunately, there are no buttons on the camera at all, so you do have to use the mouse to manipulate the on-screen menu, and that includes using the mouse to start recording and that kind of thing. So you do have to have it plugged into a monitor if you want to do any recording, but you probably would do anyway, so you can check everything's in focus. So I thought what we'd do is just have a look at the image quality and see how it compared to the 21 megapixel camera, and then we can see whether it's actually worthwhile buying one of these. Right, so the GUI is fairly bare bones. At the top here you've got the focus setting. At the moment it's set to autofocus, and then if you put something underneath it will just refocus on that really quickly. So the autofocus works quite well, but it is quite easy for it to get confused, especially if you are soldering on it, and the smoke will really confuse it quickly. So what you can actually do is, once you've got it in focus, you can click manual focus, and then you know, it won't do the hunting, which is ideal for when you're actually doing videos where you're soldering. And thankfully it does remember that setting. So particularly on a simulfocal microscope like this one, once you've set up the focus, everything stays in focus together. So you'll need to adjust the focus if you change the zoom so that you can see through the eyepieces anyway, and the camera will obviously stay in focus at that point. So for general purpose, with the trinocular microscope, once you've set the focus, you can leave it on manual focus and you're done basically. Where it might be useful is on the tube microscope, the 180 times one that I've done a video on before, where you might want to just do a PCB inspection. The autofocus will be a lot more useful on that. And then there's a box here which allows you to change the region of interest for the autofocus, so you can either pick a preset small or large, or you can change the sliders to change the shape of the little box that's in the center of the screen, which is where it decides the focus to adjust to. Then there's the basic image settings, so exposure, gain, color, and contrast, sharpness, that kind of thing. And then there's the buttons here associated with capturing video, and I think this one allows you to capture an image, but there's no other settings other than starting a video and stopping a video, so you can't really choose the frame rate or anything like that. It just records at whatever it's set to. So I've not tried recording yet, so I think if you click capture, I'm assuming it takes a image, so we'll try clicking that. And it looks like you get a little egg timer, and then it doesn't do anything further, so I'm assuming that just took an image. And if we click video, it says capture start. Oh, and then we've got a little flashing red dot at the bottom of the image. And let's try recording this and see how it comes out. The image quality on the HDMI monitor looks really good actually, and the image is not lagging or, there's no image quality issues when sliding the PCB around, even if you do it quite quick. It's got a very good refresh rate. It's definitely a true 60 frames per second, but on the HDMI capture it looks pretty good. I'm not sure what it looks like on the SD card because I've never tried it, so this is the first test, but overall that looks pretty good. There's also a few other settings. So it's got HDR settings, so it's currently set to 1. That's the high dynamic range setting, so let's try setting it to maximum. And you can see here that the chip on the right hand side got a lot darker, and we seem to be able to see much more detail. It might be interesting to try out one of the black PCBs. In the soldering comparison video I noticed that the black PCB really caused issues with the other camera, so I might just grab one of those quickly. So this is the PCB I had a little bit of trouble with in the solder comparison video. The black PCB along with the very shiny solder joint seemed to cause quite a bit of havoc for the other camera, so it'd be interesting to see how this looks once we review the footage. But certainly overall the image quality looks really nice. Yeah, I'm quite impressed with how this one looks. But definitely the scrolling of the PCB around the screen, at least on the HDMI port, is super smooth. It's definitely more smooth than the other cameras that I've tested so far. So in terms of the autofocus, it does seem to work quite well. It is possible to get it lost. So if you move your PCB around a lot in an area where it can't focus on, because remember, it's only using the little square in the middle to focus. So if you move the PCB up and down really quickly and give it an area where it can't focus on, it's probably not going to do it now. There we go, it sort of got lost, but it has recovered. Sometimes it doesn't recover very quickly, and you do have to move the board around a little bit to get it to recover. But I'm pretty sure that's down to the really shallow depth of field of this particular microscope setup. It will behave better on other systems. But overall, I'm quite happy with the camera. I've not reviewed the SD card footage yet, so I can't vouch for how good that is. I'm really hoping it hasn't got a timestamp on the recordings, but other than that I'm quite happy with it. Whether it's better than the other one, well, the dynamic range definitely seems to be better, so that's my main area that I wanted to improve on, because it's very easy to wash out the picture with highlights. Right, so a different day, and I've just finished editing the video, and unfortunately what I found is that the SD card recording is firstly not at 60 frames per second, which is slightly annoying really. It outputs absolutely flawlessly to the monitor at 60 frames per second, so I guess you could use a capture card or something like that to import the video onto your PC, but I don't have one, and it's another piece of hardware to worry about. What I quite like about these cameras is that you can just put the SD card in, press record, and you're done. You don't have to worry about any extra hardware. So that's slightly frustrating, and also the image format, it does encode in H.264, but it's not in a container that can be read directly with any video editing software, so you have to transcode it using Handbrake or VLC, and all of that just adds faff to the editing process. So that's slightly annoying. I don't see why a piece of equipment 3 times more expensive than these ones can't record at 60 frames per second. The little blue one and the 21 megapixel camera both are able to record at 60 frames per second, and they just import directly into your software. So that is a slight annoyance with that one. So I might have a look to see if there's any suitable capture cards, but I am hoping that maybe there'll be a firmware update or someone hacks it rather than it being a hardware limitation. In terms of the actual sensor, looking at the images, it's actually a really, really good quality Sony sensor. So it might be that there is a slightly better implementation of this particular camera. I know there's various different microscope cameras using the IMX290, and it may be one of those is slightly better suited to my purposes. But hopefully you found that video useful, especially if you are looking at microscope cameras. I'll put a link to all 3 cameras here in the description down below in case you're interested. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, especially if you've got any comments on topics that you want me to cover in the future. But until next time, thanks for watching.